All right, so let's jump into this demo. I am going to draw 3 views for this. I'm going to draw a front view, a side view or profile, SIPE. How about side? This isn't a spelling class, this is a head drawing class. And then the 3/4 shot on the side. So the front view and the side view, let's think of these as like absolute orthographic views. I'm not going to put perspective into this, meaning I'm not going to do like 1 point per 2 point perspective. I'm just going to, you'll see what I mean when I start drawing. And the 3/4 is where we actually get to explore all the things that we talk about with this front and side view. So I'm going to start everything with the simple sphere. And don't worry about your spheres being perfect. It doesn't matter. I'll do this just so we can see the shape. Now, you'll notice I'm saying sphere and I'm not saying circle. There's obviously a difference between the two. I want us to think of this within dimension. I want us to think about the shapes and not just focus on the lines. I think that's a very key part of all of this. This is what's going to give us the ability to not just draw this from observation, but also draw this from invention. It's just understanding the forms, obviously. So from here, I'm going to drop a center line right down the middle. So also, just before I get too far ahead, I want to explain that that circle that I drew, that sphere that I drew, is not the whole head. I have this here just so we can reference this and keep coming back to this. Let me make sure I have a new layer. Okay. When I draw that circle is right here. So I like to think of the circle as just the cranial mass. So when I drop that circle in, I'm going to drop it obviously farther down than my actual sphere goes. Here's the other thing too, when we're looking at the head, it's not a sphere. Those are adjustments that we're going to make when the time comes, but for now, we'll keep this pretty simple. So there's my center line. I'm not gonna nail in a chin just yet. On my profile view, I'll have it looking to our right, and I'm just going to drop a center line from like about halfway through this. Just let that drop. Again, not determining anything. And then for the 3/4, here's what I'm doing. It's going to be a 3/4 with a slight tilt to it. So just to clarify, or just so, not to clarify, but just so that we all are on the same page, this is roughly the angle that I'll be drawing. So a slight up shot with a 3/4, so we don't miss that. So again, just over the forehead and then down. Because this shot is slightly up, I'm not going to drop this as far as I'm dropping the other ones. And here's the thing. The reason why I didn't drop this is because I need to talk about this. Before I get to the chin, I can actually drop the brow line. Here's my little rule of thumb. Wherever even if I drop this lower, the way that I've set this up, this being the cranial mass, what I'm looking for is the brow line, first of all, not the eye line. And I'm going to drop this right in the middle, so halfway horizontally through the original sphere. This is the brow line, again, not the eye line. So going back to this, I can see, and obviously this is a little bit of an upshot, so there's my wrapping line. Here's my wrapping line here, and it's just halfway, right? So, oops, spoiler. So there's my brow line. The other thing that we want to make sure of is make sure that that brow line that we're dropping is perpendicular to our original center line. So when I say that this is an orthographic view, think of these as wrapping lines. Even though we're seeing these as straight lines, imagine that we are looking at like a hula hoop, but we're looking at it directly from the side. So even though it appears like a straight line to us, if I was to move up or down, I would see that this is, round. Right. So looking here, I'm going to drop in my wrapping line. And again, I'm paying attention to this now. So I've already set this up, so if I was to imagine my center line, I want that wrapping line to cross my center line with a certain angle. So I'm still drawing a wrapping line around the entire ball, but I'm paying close attention to the angle that I'm crossing the center line at. The reason why is because when I drop my chin line, however low I drop that, all my wrapping lines on this needs to match. Otherwise, I'm going to get distortion. I am not saying that that doesn't always have to happen. That's something that we see normally when we're looking at photos, especially selfies. A lot of times the camera is actually too close to the person's head. So a lot of times we'll get this like brow, eye line, nose line, mouth line, chin line. So a selfie automatically, because you're taking it yourself, is always going to distort your face a little bit. So, which is, I don't even recommend selfie sticks because that just looks ridiculous. Is that still a thing? Do people still do that? I don't even recommend selfies. Take pictures of other things. Sorry. Let's get into that. I have rules for Instagram, and like one of them is no selfies. Is that awful? Let's not talk about that anymore. So what I'm doing here is, for the sake of this demo, everything stays consistent. So brow line, eye line, nose line, whatever. Everything is going to stay consistent. So anyway, I'm going to, at this point, drop my chin line. So there's two things that I'm going to do. I have to determine the height of how far down I'm putting this, and then the width of how wide I'm going to make the chin. If I go too high, this becomes very childlike. Right now I'm shrinking the proportions from the brow to the chin, so this will come off very childlike. If I go too far down, the lower I go, the more masculine this becomes. If I go too far down, it's just not anything. So I'm going to keep it somewhere, I don't know, here. Let's just say here. So again, this is just me eyeballing. I'm just kind of guessing. I'm not even guessing, I'm just drawing, because this isn't based on anything. I'm not drawing from a photo. At this point also, I'm going to determine the width of the face that I'm drawing. This is, again, your call. Just know, obviously, the wider, maybe not obviously, the wider I go with this chin, the more masculine this face is going to turn out. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the thinner that I make the chin, the more feminine this will come out. That's not really the case, but you get to a certain width, and if you're designing, that's something that I would avoid when drawing a female. So from here, I'm just going to close it up, just bringing all of my shapes together. And here's our 3/4. Again, paying close attention to this, wherever I have that. Because this is a slight upshot too, I'm pulling this up a little bit, perspective. So bring that around, close it up, close up my shape. So pretty straightforward. And I'll do this just so we are clear about that. So the next thing I want to look for is the nose line. So when I say the nose line, what I don't mean is like the tip of the nose. If I was to quickly draw a face, I don't mean this, like the tip of the nose. I mean like, where does your septum come back down and connect back with your face, if that makes sense. So that's a long nose. That's a little bit better. Let's make somebody very disappointed. Okay. So I'm looking at this. If you held your finger under your nose, like you're making like the stinky, like, where the top of your finger is touching your nose is the line that I'm looking for. At what point does the septum come back and meet the rest of your face? Where is the top of your finger touching that? So these proportions that we're talking about are general. These generally fits everybody, but not everybody's going to fit into this. This is also something that we can think about when we're designing. I can manipulate, change these proportions, make maybe one distance smaller, one distance larger. It's all stuff that I can think about. So what I'm going to do is cut this distance between the brow and the chin. I'm just going to cut that in half. Right in half. And then for my 3/4, same thing. Here's something else that I want to talk about. It's my few little rules to drawing faces. My rule number 1 is I don't commit to anything. Meaning if I drew something, I always want to assume that it's wrong. I always want to give myself an opportunity to fix things. So I'm constantly just assuming that I made a mistake, and I'm constantly just looking for things to fix. I do this a lot too, by the way. If you guys aren't doing this, if you haven't been doing this your whole life, what are you even doing? Right? Just keep flipping things. If you're drawing on paper, you can like turn it over. I have sound effects, by the way. You can turn it over and then like hold it up to the light. You know what I mean? And then you'll be able to see it backwards. That's something I used to do when I was a kid. Anyway, so I have my chin line, my nose line, and my brow line. The next thing I'm looking for is my hairline. Now, when I say hairline, I'm not talking specifically about the actual hairline. I call it that. What I'm looking for is really the temporal line. What I really mean is at what point does it stop becoming a side plane and start becoming a top plane. I'm looking for that break in the curve. What I don't want to actually look for is the hairline, so maybe I shouldn't call it that. Let's call it the temporal line. So I'll say TL. Because here's the thing. Here's my hairline. Here's my dad's hairline. That's different for everybody. So, but you know, the break of the curve, that's something. So if you try this right now, so do this again with your finger, like actually do this, and then put your thumb like under. This is the worst hand ever. Put your thumb under your chin and then lock this distance, right? So index finger under your nose, and then thumb under your chin. Now, with your fingers locked like this, bring your thumb up to your nose. Where does your index finger go? To your brow, right? And you do that again. Now bring your thumb to your brow, and your index finger should go to your hairline. So if there's anything that we walk away from today, remembering, let it be this: the distance between the chin and the nose and the brow to the temporal line is roughly the same. So 1, 2, 3. This is, again, now where I'm going to go and make some adjustments. Like, I feel like this is a really dramatic sloping forehead, so I might want to make that adjustment. This is enough of an upshot where I'll get a little bit of it. Here's the other thing too, and like, let's look at the skull. What we can see is the distance from the, let's erase all of this so I can see better. The distance from each side of the head, like so, this distance, the distance of one side of the head to the other is far less than the distance of the back of the head to the front. And so the face is much longer than it is wide, if that makes sense. So I need to add that mass right there. So I like to add that to the back. Here's another way to really remember this. This makes life a little bit easier. The distance from the top of the head to the bottom of the chin, and again, this is general, is going to be equal to the distance of the top of the face to the back of the head. So it's like this should all fit inside of a square, if that makes sense also. So I'm going to add just to here. Also, just to skip ahead, the nose line that we have set up, that also lines up with the base of the cranial mass. So this would be like the insertion for your spine. I'll add a little bit here. I don't want to add too much because I don't want to compromise my perspective, but nope. And that's where I'm going to make an adjustment here as well. So yeah. So now I've got my temporal line, my brow line, my nose line, and my chin line. There's my perspective. I'll drop this in. I'll drop this in on all of them. Let's do it. A little spine action, just so we don't have floating heads. Yes. Let's dive in. All right. So it's still a little wonky. We're almost there. We're almost at like at least a head shape. We're getting closer by adding that length, or adding a little bit more mass to the back of the head. This is definitely helping. Adding that neck, we get to see the relationship to the rest of the body, but there's still more to do. I'm gonna show, but there's still more to do. Looking at this skull, here's another thing that we can think about, and this is the temples. So, here's something I don't have on this. Anyway, from this view, we should see, from an absolute front view, we can see that we're seeing both of the temples. Right? This means that the front of the face, so from like the lateral edge of each side of your brow bone, I think this is like the zygomatic bone, like let's just say here the brow ridge on the outside, the lateral edge. Each side of this is, the distance is less than the distance of, or the width of the cranial mass back here. Right. I have this, let me turn off all of these so you can see. Oh no, the magic. And here's a top view. So this is the back of the head. This is where the front of the face is. It's like an egg shape. Just like if I turn this upside down, it's like the front view of a face. So we need to account for this. We need to account for the fact that the temples, or we need to account for the fact that the front of the face is not as wide as the back of the head. So we'll do that with a subtraction. I mentioned earlier that we would be cutting from this, adding from this. So what I'm doing is I'm going to take a knife. I'm going to take my sculpting knife, and I'm going to slice off a little bit of each side of this head. So from this absolute front view, what should happen is I should see both of them. We saw that with that skull, and this is going to be the same for this. The temple that we're going to cut, the temple line that we're going to cut is going to top out at the hairline and then bottom out at the nose line. Now, depending on how you drew yours, you might not even get to that, so that's fine. A couple of things. Be mindful of how much space you're leaving for the face. What I'm doing, and I should do this on the skull to show you. What I want to do is I'm actually cutting below this, like all of this is coming to here, and then the top of this is going to the temporal line. So here would be my nose line. So what I want this to do is I want this to touch the edge of the eye socket line. I'm doing this, again, I'm inventing this, so I'm not drawing from observation. If I was to draw this from observation, which, again, spoilers, we will do in a second, what I want to do is aim for like the tip of the eyebrow. That's typically what I tell people, but that's also not helpful because a lot of people's eyebrows are different. What I'm looking for is the edge of the eye socket. So here it is on my side view. Why am I so zoomed in? So if it helps, like just imagining like where the eyebrow is, that can always help you like lay down. So here it is on our side view. So just to make this a little bit more visually or aesthetically pleasing, I'm going to use value here so we can see our shapes a little bit better. Keep in mind this is a subtraction, so I am actually going to go as far as to even erase my excess here. And again, I'm aiming for like the tip of the eyebrows. If that person that you're drawing's eyebrows work that way. But what I can also look for are like lighting cues. I can look for like high points or low points and just find the edge of the eye socket. And here it is on my 3/4 shot. Keep in mind your perspective. So I tend to see this a lot when people are learning this. They're not, like somehow the far side becomes wider than the side that's closest to us. Just simple perspective, right? If we did this properly, we should see that the brow line is dividing this temple line in half. And good. If you did that, then you did right. I want us to think of this as a slice, so I'm even going to go as far as to like flatten this line on my 3/4. And now what I want to do is dissect this vertically. So my side view, my 3/4, almost unnecessary, but we're going to do it. And then on my 3/4, this line gives us a couple of things. Here's the important thing too. Make sure that is parallel with your center line. If not, again, we're going to get crazy distortions. If we go too wide at the base, then it gives us a really masculine jaw. If not, we might pinch that too much and it's just going to be strange. So yeah. So one thing that it does is gives us a stopping point for this jaw. This is actually where the jaw will insert. Well, almost. This is the back of the mandible here. This is also giving us placement for the ear. You can, if you don't know already, the bottom of your ear, generally speaking, lines up with the base, with the bottom of your nose. The top of your ear lines up with your brow line, so we have that here. So all I'm going to do is just drop a shape, and this is as far as we're going with the ear today. Dropping a C curve on the back bottom pizza slice of the temple. All right, so our next step is to divide up the face just a little bit more. Everything that we've done, we've kind of set a line and then we just divided things in half. We're going to continue that between the brow and our nose line. So, like I said, halfway between there, I'm going to drop the line. And this is going to mark two separate things. This is going to be the base of the eye socket, but this is also, for the side plane, going to mark the top of the zygomatic arch. It's over the cheekbone. Again, halfway. Why am I always so zoomed in? I'll bring that all the way back. Well, at least back to the ears. And then 3/4 view, matching my wrapping line. I'm only going to bring it here. Then once I reach the temple, straight back. That's pretty low. So now I can start dropping in some features. I am going to show you a detailed way of doing this. We're going to refer back to our skulls, but then I'm also going to show you like a nicer, quicker way of getting this. So we're going to start with the eye sockets. And here's the thing, and we can see this from our 3/4 view. Let me actually show you this. This is what I used to do. We used to just take a straight line from here to here and do this. And this was going to mark our side plane for the eye socket. The problem with this is way too simple. There's a lot more information. It's like a 3-part curve, and we're simplifying that into a single line, which just isn't enough. I feel like that's too much of a compromise. So what we're going to do, we're just going to get real with it. So I'm looking for this, the inner line, or what I'm looking for is this, the interior of the lateral edge of the eye socket, right? So I'm thinking 1, 2, 3, right? That's something that, and this is obviously the same exact skull every time, but this is something that we see on everybody. So 1, 2, 3. So the reason why I like this is because it's accurate. There's no compromise. There's no oversimplification of anything. It's just exactly what it is. So keep in mind that this isn't, just because this is the angle that I'm seeing on one side, it's not going to be this. It's not like I would do this on the outside, right? So I can still see the same thing. Here's our big swoop. 1 at the top, 2 in the middle, and then 3 back down to that middle line that we created. What you'll also notice, and you can notice it more on the side view as well as this, where I start this line is this line. So this is a break between the zygomatic and this part of the skull. This also marks a plane shift. So this is the front plane breaking into the dental sphere, and then this is like side plane. We can see that especially here. So I'll be marking that as well. So to make this easier, I'll drop this in on our side view. So I'm not going to touch this. I'm going to be right inside of that. But I'll go whoop. 1, 2, 3. Big swoop to the top. 1, 2, 3. So again, that's just the interior edge of the lateral side of the eye socket. 1, 2, big swoop. 3. On this front view, this is where it will look a little funny because we're just getting these brows or just these ridges. So you'll see. While I'm on this, let's talk a little bit about the eyeball. We can't just don't do this. The eyeballs, A, are much bigger than this, and then B, it looks like a very worried Dragon Ball Z character, right? Or like an anime character, but we're just dropping the eyeballs. We'll get to that when we get to it. So now I have that. Now let's get that break of the plane. So right where I started this line, I'm going to drop a diagonal curve down to the nose line. Again, this is marking a plane break from the front plane to the side plane. Diagonal back and down. Back and down. from this point down here, I need to connect back here and then finish off the zygomatic bone. So we can see that the zygomatic, if we could see where the ear was, the ear, if this marks like right where the tragus is, this is like halfway through the ear. Oops. So what I'm going to do to create this, I'm going to keep this simple and just make an S-curve. So, whoa, that was loud. So I'm just making a simple S-curve. I'm almost thinking about this as like the arms of eyeglasses, but like really thick. And if I wanted to, I can give this a little bit more dimension. So if you want to give this like a lower edge, because we're because we're dropping like a top-down view. From our side plane, not all that much to do here. Still dropping an S-curve, or from our front plane, I should say. And that's it. So now we've got a decent amount of information here. Let's talk about this far view. I did show you quickly here. So this is where I would rely on observation if I was drawing from reference. But I like to start from the top and then work my way down on the far side. The opposite of what I normally do from the side that I'm closer to. So I'll start here. Here's my big swoop. Back. The middle line. And then the bottom line slightly out. And then back to our zygomatic line. I can drop this in as well. And wrap that around. So the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to start dividing again. This is where we get into the gender differences territory. I usually use this for design purposes, so if I was inventing, I'm really paying attention to this. If I'm drawing observationally, then I'm just drawing whatever I see. And we'll get into that when we get to the observational part of this. So I'm going to mark a little hash line for the center. This is for the keystone. Now, when I say keystone, and now I'll use this, even though her hair is kind of covering this. When I say the keystone, what I mean is this area between the eyebrows and then down to the bridge of the nose. It's this area. So if I was looking at her profile, I would see forehead, I would see curved back, and then I would see bridge of the nose. That right there is our keystone. There's a reason why this is called the keystone. It's the same if you know anything about architecture. When you're building an arc or an arch, it's the one stone that keeps everything together, that's shaped right here. All the other blocks are held in place by this. If you remove the keystone, everything comes tumbling down. This kind of stands the same for drawing the face. If your goal is getting a likeness, then we need to nail this. So some of the differences between men and women are in this keystone. And I want to say more masculine and feminine. And this isn't a hard rule, but this is something that you can notice by looking. Typically speaking, for a female, the keystone can be wider and taller. And then for a male, we're looking at something shorter and thinner. And so what this is doing, this is increasing and decreasing the distance between the brows and the eyes. So it's not a hard rule because we can find examples of plenty of men who have this keystone, and we can find examples of plenty of women who have this keystone. For instance, Paul McCartney has a super tall and wide keystone. Really, really tall and wide keystone. People like Natalie Portman, Scarlett Johansson, short. Still kind of wide from side to side, but like really not all that tall. So, there's plenty of examples of that. For this example, I'm going to keep this tall and wide. Again, always measuring from my center line. So if I was drawing a female, if I was designing a female, I would keep that maybe closer to halfway down. If I was drawing a male, I'm going like 1/4 of the way down. And then like that would be, so this is female, and then that's male, right? For this one, all I'm doing is just curving back. That's all I need to do. So I'm just adjusting now my center line. And my 3/4, we want to think about that plane shift too. So when I drop this halfway mark, I don't want to draw it directly over that line because I have to think about how that's going to affect everything else. So if I was to redraw the center line now, my center line is going from here and then inward and down to there. So that's my keystone. This is giving me a place to start the bridge of my nose, but this is also starting to close up the rest of this eye socket. So once I drop in the nose, that's when I can pop in an eyeball in there. I mentioned this at the top of the video. I am not going to be covering facial features in this video. That's not what this week is all about. I purposely did that just because I feel like if the second I put in facial features, we're just going to want to do that, and then we lose sight of this. This is super important. So let's make sure that we nailed this. So let's talk about the nose. There is a simple, and then there's a simple way to do this, and then there is a direct way to do this. I find that the simple way of doing, I'll show you really quickly. I find that the simple way of doing this is too simple, much like other solutions that we've used in the past. So this it just becomes difficult to actually fit a nose in here. What we used to do is a 4-plane breakdown. So we would do like the bridge of the nose, side planes of the nose, under plane of the nose, and that was it, right? So we would have 1, 2, 3, and then 4. What I like to do is 6 planes, and then I don't use straight lines. So this is where this works very well observationally. This is also where I think a lot of this likeness can make or break. I'll talk about this more when we get to the facial features, but for some reason, I find that the nose, you get less leeway. There's less forgiveness when you're trying to get a likeness down. I feel like there's the eyes, you have like, I don't know, 8% of like, give or take. The mouth, there's a little bit more. If you're off a little bit, you can still land a likeness. But for some reason, the nose, like there's only like, I don't know. If it's off a little bit, it kind of throws off the whole likeness. So ears, forever you can draw the same ears on everybody. It doesn't matter. Nobody's going to be like, that's not what their ears look like. You can quote me on that. Well, if you're drawing like Randy Couture or like Ronda Rousey or somebody with like crazy cauliflower ear, then maybe draw the ear specifically. Otherwise, nobody's going to call you out on that. So let's get to this nose. I will do this first. No, we'll do it on the front. And I'm going to commit to the taller keystone. So what I'm doing is I'm going to use curves for this. And again, this is a generic nose that I'm going to draw. So I'm going to start with the bridge of the nose. And this will play out better when we do this observationally. So I'm thinking about the bone underneath, the cartilage underneath, and I'm going to slightly widen as I get down to the nose line. So like I said, this nose line is not the tip of the nose, and for the sake of this demo, I'm going to put the tip of the nose a little bit higher than this. I'm going to upturn the nose just so we can see what we're talking about. But that's just the top plane of the bridge of the nose. For my side view, I'll do this. Again, we're seeing that from a side plane. And then for my 3/4, and it's a slight upshot, so I'm going to be even farther away. I'm going to be even farther away from this nose line. I'm going to turn this even more. So I end it with a slight dip. So this is just to kind of account for the roundness of the bulbous tip of the nose. Now I'll get into my side planes. My side planes I'm going to bring down to the eye socket line from the base of the keystone. And I'm going to do this slowly on all of them. So this will finish off like the eye socket. But this is where this gets tricky. So we have to imagine where the nostril is. I'm going to write over the cheek, so slightly round, and then bring this down to where the nostril is going to connect. So this is like surface. It's weird. We're drawing a skull with a nose, basically, and cookies for ears. We'll talk about this also next week when we get to the facial features, but the reason why I think the nose is so tricky is because there's the most variability, or like most variation in the nose. If you think about, and again, I'll talk about this more. If you think about like a character creator in a video game, all those little sliders that we get for this, in a good one, there's so many things to do to manipulate the nose. So anyway, now I'm going to connect the septum. Here's where we have some decisions to make, or things to just pay attention to. I'm going to start at the tip of the nose and then just bring this down to the nose line. So with certain people, the septum will connect higher than the nostrils, maybe. With some people, the septum will connect lower than the nostrils. This is what I'm talking about with all that variability. So those are things that we want to pay attention to or decide if we're designing. So for us, I'm going to bring that septum all the way down to that nose line. Maybe for this one, I'll keep this just above it. And then for the nostrils and the side plane, I'm just going to close this out with an S-curve. So again, soft out around the bulbous part of the nose, in, back around the nostrils, and then I'm just connecting. Can't really see all that much curvature here. I might, you know what, I'm going to bring this down just to make it more interesting. So I said that I have a couple of rules when I draw the head, and I mentioned earlier that one of my rules was to not commit to anything. This is how I kind of ensure my likeness is just constantly double checking. But here's where I have another rule that's a hard contradiction to that. I don't care about likeness. Your intention should not be to get a likeness when we're doing portraits. The most important thing, the one thing that you should commit to, is making a really good drawing. Right, your drawing comes first. In the end, it doesn't matter if it looks like the person. What matters is this, because this is what people are going to see. You're not going to present your portraits to people and then show them a photo and be like, huh? You know, you're going to present your painting. You're going to present your drawing. The only time where that obviously doesn't come into play is if you're getting paid, if it's a commission to do a portrait, then by all means, please try really hard. Make it look like that person. And even then, and we'll get into this in the future, and even then, that's not your number one priority. I know that sounds crazy, but your number one priority when you're doing a paid commission portrait of somebody is not to get a likeness. And you're like, is he going to explain what the number one priority is? Yeah, I will. It's to be flattering. It's to make it look good. So you can, if you're off a little bit, but it looks like if you make them look better, that's where that counts. So anyway, I added this really quickly. So I'm just slightly pushing out the brow ridge, and this is where we want to be careful. A little bit of variability too. So I'm thinking about how high up or down that I'm placing this, but also what I'm thinking about is how far out am I going to protrude this. If I was drawing a female at the forehead, like this is almost like smooth to me. I'm not going to push this out. Where I let that show is on the lateral edges of the brow. So like if I was to do wrapping lines, I would keep this here. I'd still put it in just for the sake of it, but then where we get to see that is laterally. So I might see just a slight, like this would be my new line, forehead, slight push out, and back around. Right, but not much in the middle. If you're drawing a male, push that out all you want. Look at Jason Momoa. Jason Momoa has like the craziest brow ridge. He's like uber masculine, like uber Superman. Anyway, now that I'm here, I can drop in an eyeball. I'm not going to go too much into detail with this, but I want us to be aware of how big the eyeball is, how much space this is taking within the skull. I think people have the misconception of drawing the eye too small. It's got to have a decent size to it. So a couple of things that I'm thinking about is the distance from the eye to here. This varies from person to person. So I'm just going to drop my eyeball in here. And I'm only drawing like parts of a circle. I'm never going to draw like the entire circle. Maybe in here I might, but even then I want to like tuck this a little bit. The way that the brow ridge is designed, it's like a cradle to protect the eye. So we have like the brow sticking over. We have the zygomatic and cheekbone underneath to protect. Keystone, bridge of the nose, everything's protecting your eye. Ideally. Because this is our 3/4 view, I'm going to have an upshot of this, so I'm going to reveal more of the top of the eye. Can I draw an eye one day? One day when I grow up, I'm going to draw a circle. So that's that. We have at least the beginning of where our eyes would be. We have our nose. And lastly, we just need to drop in our mouth. So we're dividing everything in half, and now I'm just going to divide things into thirds. So here's our first third. And when I say divide things, I'm going to, below the nose and the chin, I'm just dividing into thirds. And then our second third. So you might already be able to tell what these are. The first line, the top closest to the nose, this is the mouth, or where the lips would meet. Talk much? And then this is the top of the chin. So not too bad. But there's more adjustments to make. Here's 1 and 2. So here's the thing. Everything that we've been building, cutting away from, adding to, we've been working off of the same exact sphere. But now we need to add more to this. So what I need to do is protrude out a little bit more for the dental sphere. I'll show. Oh, that's a big face. Is this. So we can see that really well here on this 3/4. And this is pretty dramatic. This might be maybe even too dramatic. But here's the thing. This looks extra dramatic because there's no nose attached. So that's another thing to keep in mind. We have a nose attached to ours, so don't feel like we need to push it out too far. What we just need to do is adjust this shape. This shouldn't be so flat, right? So what I'm going to do is just kind of keep this within this and round that out. On the 3/4 shot, what I'm looking for is just, and I'll show you on this, it's just right in here. Also, this is a sculpted skull. This isn't like a real skull that I have. This might be a scan, but it looks too sculpted. Like it's kind of too perfect. Either that or this was a very good looking person. But yeah, so here's my little rule of thumb. I don't ever want to push this out too far because then it's going to dramatically change the lips. Like I've said, we've already established a nose here. So what I kind of do is I line up. Now this is just absolute like up and down, right? So I'm just using horizontal and vertical registration. I don't want to push past like the tip of the nose, generally speaking. So, and I'm actually going to pull from inside here and then just round this out. What I want to be able to do is still manage to drop lips here eventually and make this not look ridiculously pushed out. You know what I mean? So I just need to imagine where like the teeth would be underneath it all. So that's all I'm doing. I used to do this whole thing. I just find it like it gets in the way of my drawing. It's unnecessary. But if that helps, like you can drop a whole egg shape up to the eye line or the eye socket line and then bottoming out at the top of the chin line. But I don't always do that. If anything, I'm doing this, so I do, especially from the front view. I continue from our zygomatic. This is the front plane now of the skull. Then I just transition into the dental sphere with the teeth. So we're not going to be drawing a mouth on this. We're going to save that for next week. So this is kind of it for the face. One last thing that I'll do is just the chin. So I like to use a soft trapezoid shape here. And you can see this better on the side view. What I'm doing is this. That would be our trapezoid, and then I'm just connecting that back to the teethers. That's what I call teeth. Right. So this is a plane shift down and around on our 3/4 shot. And connect back. All right, and there's our face. That's what we're doing. One last thing before I get too crazy or get too far or end this part of the video. I want us to think about the hyoid bone. The hyoid bone is something that's far overlooked, but this is what's going to kind of dictate this underplane that we're getting to. No. Oh, okay, I'm just going to cut that out. And that's it for the face. At least for this portion of the notes, just so we understand what these proportions are. When we get back, or in the next video, we'll be breaking this down with a more dramatic upshot, harder 3/4. It's actually not all that far from this. But yeah, we'll break this down. See you in the next video.